Donald Trump has just labeled Iran's latest proposal as stupid. This bold statement is shaking up international diplomacy. The former president took to social media to voice his sharp criticism, calling the offer a non-starter for U.S. interests. But what makes this specific proposal so controversial, and why is Trump's reaction being seen as a major turning point? Experts suggest this shift could signal a return to maximum pressure policies, altering the geopolitical landscape entirely. As tensions rise, the world watches to see if this changes everything. The real crisis is not the word that the President of the United States used. It is not stupid. It is not piece of garbage. It is not totally unacceptable. It is not, I didn't even finish reading it. These phrases, delivered from behind the Resolute desk on May 11th, 2026, are what diplomatic collapse sounds like in real time. But they are not the collapse itself. They are the noise on the surface. The real crisis is what those words are reaching for. Beneath the rhetoric, beneath the Truth Social posts, beneath the threats of returning to much higher level bombing, lies a structural problem that no proposal from Washington and no counterproposal from Tehran can solve. Three impossibilities are sitting on the same negotiating table: the Iranian nuclear program, the American naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, and the question of who, if anyone, will mediate when the United States cannot trust Tehran and Tehran cannot trust Washington, and the only credible third party in the room is Beijing, which has its own reasons for not wanting to play the role. This is what diplomatic exhaustion looks like in 2026, and almost no one is telling you what comes next. This is not speculation. Every quote and figure in this analysis comes from on-the-record reporting by Al Jazeera, CNN, NPR, NBC News, UPI, and Reuters, and from the Iranian state news agencies Tasnim and IRNA. The proposal exchanges have been confirmed by the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghaei, by Pakistani mediators, and by senior officials within the Trump administration speaking to multiple Western outlets. Subscribe right now, because the question of whether this ceasefire holds will define oil prices, shipping insurance, and the global economy for the rest of this year. Let us begin with the timeline. On April 8th, 2026, a temporary ceasefire took effect between the United States and Iran 10 weeks into the conflict. On April 11th and 12th, Pakistan-mediated talks in Islamabad collapsed. On April 28th, Iran submitted a 14-point counterproposal, confirmed by Al Jazeera, calling for a permanent end to hostilities within 30 days, a U.S. military withdrawal from forward positions, the lifting of the naval blockade, the release of frozen Iranian assets, war reparations, and a new mechanism governing the Strait of Hormuz. In early May, Washington responded with its own plan. According to Al Jazeera's May 18th reporting, the Central American demands were these: a 20-year moratorium on uranium enrichment, the transfer abroad of Iran's stockpile of roughly 400 kilograms of uranium, enriched to 60%, and the dismantling of the nuclear facilities at Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordow. On May 10th, Iran sent its response back through Pakistani mediators. Within hours, President Trump posted on Truth Social, "I have just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it. Totally unacceptable." The following day, speaking from the Oval Office, Trump escalated the language. He called the proposal a stupid proposal and a piece of garbage. He said, "I didn't even finish reading it." He said the ceasefire was on life support, and on May 12th, he upgraded that to massive life support. The Iranian Foreign Ministry's response was measured but firm. Spokesman Esmail Baghaei told reporters in Tehran, "The only thing we have demanded are Iran's legitimate rights." He called Iran's proposal generous and responsible, and accused Washington of unreasonable demands. "We know the structural facts. We know the ceasefire is in its 6th week. We know the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed to most international shipping. We know that Iran has, according to Iranian parliamentary speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, made the lifting of the U.S. naval blockade a precondition for any full ceasefire. We know that the United States has made the dismantling of Iran's nuclear program the precondition for lifting the blockade. We know these two preconditions are mutually exclusive. Neither can be granted first without surrendering the leverage the granting side needs. But we should be honest about what we do not know. We do not know the full text of either proposal. Both the Trump White House and the Iranian Foreign Ministry have declined to release them. We do not know whether the May 18 revised Iranian proposal, also sent through Pakistan, contains material changes or simply reformulated language. And we do not know what the actual operational status of the Iranian uranium stockpile is. Trump has claimed Iran has agreed to give the United States the nuclear dust, then claimed that Iran took it back. Both statements may be partially true. Both cannot be fully true. You cannot call a foreign government's negotiating position stupid and garbage in the morning, and then expect them to soften their position by the afternoon. You cannot publicly state that you didn't even finish reading the proposal, and then expect the mediators delivering it to retain authority. And you cannot demand that an adversary surrender its nuclear program as the opening bid of a negotiation, while simultaneously maintaining a naval blockade on its ports, threatening renewed bombing, and stating in the Oval Office on the record that you do not believe their assurances. These contradictions are not rhetorical. They are operational. The mediators, Pakistan publicly, Qatar quietly, Saudi Arabia and Egypt diplomatically, must now carry a message back to Tehran that the President of the United States dismissed without reading. That is not how proposals get refined into agreements. That is how proposals get withdrawn entirely. The Iranian response, delivered by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi from a press conference in New Delhi during the BRICS foreign ministers' meeting on May 15th, was not the language of a regime preparing to concede. Araghchi said discussion of uranium enrichment is currently not on the agenda of discussions or negotiations. That sentence is not negotiating posture. That sentence is a strategic line drawn in front of the entire BRICS bloc. The administration's claim, repeated in different forms throughout the week, is that the American naval blockade is bringing Iran to the table. Acknowledging the partial truth, the blockade is real. Iranian oil exports have collapsed, and Iran has, according to NBC News reporting, begun to cut production because storage capacity is filling. These are facts. The pressure is genuine, but it is the wrong measurement. The right measurement is whether the pressure is producing American objectives or merely producing Iranian counterpressure. And on that measurement, the picture is darker. Iran has responded to the blockade not by abandoning its nuclear program, but by closing the Strait of Hormuz to most foreign shipping, by capturing foreign-flagged vessels, by maintaining the exception for Chinese ships only, and by globalizing the negotiation through the BRICS framework. The blockade is searching the house for Iranian capitulation, finding economic strain in the bedroom, and missing the family of 6 in the basement. The BRICS realignment, the Chinese exception, the Hormuz closure, and the diplomatic isolation of the United States from its own European allies that this video has documented in earlier analyses. Now we come to the deeper structural failure. American negotiating doctrine, as expressed in the May proposal, rests on 3 assumptions. First, that maximalist demands, 20-year enrichment moratorium, transfer of uranium stockpile, dismantling of 3 nuclear sites, represent a workable opening bid. Second, that public verbal pressure on Iran will compress its timeline. Third, that Pakistan can serve as the sole credible mediator. All 3 assumptions are now visibly stressed. The first assumption has failed because Iran has read the American proposal as a demand for unilateral disarmament during an active conflict. No state has ever agreed to such terms while still under blockade and active threat. The Libya 2003 model that the proposal implicitly invokes was negotiated after sanctions, not during a hot war. The second assumption has failed because public rhetoric of the stupid and garbage variety does not produce concessions from sovereign governments. It produces hardening. Araghchi's BRICS statement is the operational evidence. The third assumption is now the most consequential: Pakistan's mediation. As Al Jazeera's Kamal Haider reported from Islamabad, has tried to push Iran toward a middle ground, but Pakistan does not have the leverage to force concessions on either side. China does. And China, as Trump himself acknowledged after his May 15th Beijing summit with Xi Jinping, has declined to play the role. "We don't need favors," Trump told reporters on Air Force One. The CNN reporting on the same trip described the Chinese position as hesitant to get involved. Beneath this is the genuine constraint that deserves acknowledgement. Iran is also losing. The blockade is real. The economy is strained. The regime has lost its supreme leader. But these constraints have not produced the concessions Washington demands. They have produced the proposal that Washington called stupid. The two sides are losing in different ways, on different timelines, at different costs. That is the actual asymmetry. History does not have a good name for what happens when a hegemonic power calls its adversary's proposals stupid in public, while privately depending on third-party mediators it cannot control. A closest analog is the Paris peace talks of 1968 to 1973, during which American negotiators publicly dismissed North Vietnamese proposals while the war continued and casualties mounted and the bargaining position eroded month by month. The conflict eventually ended on terms that bore little resemblance to the demands the United States had been making in 1968. What comes next? The May 18th revised Iranian proposal is being processed in Washington. The CENTCOM blockade continues. The Hormuz remains closed. The BRICS foreign ministers have met in Delhi without the United States in the room. Some Trump aides, according to CNN sources, are now arguing for a return to major combat operations. Others are arguing for continued diplomacy. The question that nobody in Washington will answer publicly is what the third Iranian proposal will look like, because the trajectory suggests it will be harder, not softer, than the one Trump called stupid. The ceasefire between the United States and Iran is in its 6th week, and in the president's own words, on massive life support. The American proposal demands 20-year enrichment moratorium, transfer of 400 kilograms of enriched uranium, and dismantling of 3 nuclear sites. The Iranian proposal demands lifting of the blockade, end of war on all fronts, including Lebanon, frozen asset release, war reparations, and a new Hormuz mechanism. The president has called Iran's proposal stupid, garbage, and totally unacceptable, and has stated he did not finish reading it. Iran's foreign minister has stated that uranium enrichment is not on the agenda. Pakistan continues to mediate without leverage. China has declined to mediate at all. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed. Some Trump advisors are now arguing for renewed bombing. That is the actual state of U.S.-Iran diplomacy in May 2026. And somewhere tonight, in a Pakistani Foreign Office building in Islamabad, a sealed envelope is being prepared for delivery to Washington. It contains the third Iranian response to the third American proposal in 5 weeks of stalled talks. The president will read it, or he will not. He will call it acceptable, or he will not. And underneath the envelope, the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. The uranium remains where it is. The blockade continues. The mediators are running out of room. And the only third party that could break the deadlock has just told the President of the United States that it does not do favors. We will keep tracking every development, the proposals, the rejections, the mediation movements, and the question of whether bombing resumes before negotiation does. It is in your shipping costs. It is in every cargo manifest sitting idle in the Gulf.